The Lucifer doctrine was created by man. Now, the verse that people use to teach that doctrine is Isaiah 14:12. Let's read it. It says, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?" Many people use this verse as proof of Satan's original name being Lucifer. However, this verse cannot be used to prove that point. Here's why. The Old Testament was written in Hebrew, but the word Lucifer in this verse is not a Hebrew word. It's a Latin word. Hebrew came before the Latin. So by default, Satan's name cannot be Lucifer because Lucifer is a Latin translation of the Hebrew. When the King James Bible was written, the translators took the Latin word Lucifer from the Latin Vulgate and they put it in the King James Bible. However, as you can see on the screen, the original word in Isaiah 14:12 in the Hebrew text is Hayalal, which means morning star. So, let me give you the history of what happened. When the Latin Vulgate was written in 382 AD, the Latin translators took the Hebrew word Hayalal, which means morning star, and they translated it into the Latin word Lucifer. In other words, if you want to say morning star in Latin, you would say Lucifer. So when they translated the Hebrew word Hayalal into the Latin word Lucifer, they were not trying to say that Satan's name is Lucifer. Because if that's the case, you would have to go back to the Hebrew, which came before the Latin, and call Satan Hayalal. But we know that nobody calls him that. See, all the Latin translators were trying to do was properly translate the Hebrew word Hayalal, which means morning star, into the Latin language. That's all they were trying to do. Now, here's what happened. Later on, when the King James Bible was being put together, the King James translators took the word Lucifer from the Latin Vulgate instead of using the earlier Hebrew text. So that's why we see the word Lucifer in our Bibles today. It's not a reference to Satan's name. It's just a Latin translation of the words morning star. Look at this. On the screen is an interlinear Bible with the Latin Vulgate on the left and the King James Version on the right. Now, look at verse 12. This is Latin. It says, Quomodo cecadisti de caelo Lucifer. Now, let's look at the King James Version next to it. It says, How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer? Notice that all the words in the King James Version are English words except the word Lucifer. See, the King James translators took the word Lucifer directly from the Latin. They didn't translate it into English like they did all the other words. Because if they did, it would have said morning star instead of Lucifer. You can see the same word in both translations, which means that the King James translators used the Latin word. Now, as time went on, people turned the Latin word Lucifer into a personal name when it was never meant to be a personal name. It was just the Latin translation of the words morning star. So that is how Lucifer became Satan's name. That doctrine was created by man. The Bible does not say anywhere that Satan's name is Lucifer. Now, before I get into the scriptures, here's the part that's really important to understand. And this is where many people are going to have a problem with what I'm saying because of the doctrine that they're used to. Here's the point. Isaiah 14:12 is not even talking about Satan. It's talking about the literal king of Babylon, which at that time was Nebuchadnezzar. Remember, Lucifer just means morning star. The reason the term morning star is used in Isaiah 14 and 12 is because stars produce light. Stars are high above us and they shine their light down upon us. Nebuchadnezzar had become risen up in his pride, and he exalted himself as if he was the light of the world. So he is sarcastically being addressed as the morning star, or Lucifer in the Latin. However, we know that the true morning star in the Bible is Yahweh Shai. This is Revelation 22 and 16. It says, I, Yahweh Shai, have sent mine angel to testify unto you these things in the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David. Watch this. And the bright and morning star. So we see that Yahweh Shai said that he is the bright and morning star. Why? Because he is the one that gives the true light to the world. See, Nebuchadnezzar tried to exalt himself up into this position. However, the Most High appointed this position to his son, Yahweh Shai. This is John 8 and 12. It says, Then spake Yahweh Shai again unto them, saying, here it is, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. So here we see Yahweh Shai explaining that he is the one who gives the world the light that we need. In other words, he teaches us how to live righteously by setting the perfect example for us to follow. Now, in the Old Testament, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, exalted himself into this position. That's why he was called Lucifer, or morning star. It's like saying, you're so great, then how did you fall, Mr. Light of the World? So the Most High sarcastically referred to Nebuchadnezzar as the morning star because he thought he was greater than he actually was. Now, many people read Isaiah chapter 14 with a presupposition that won't allow them to see what it's actually saying. Since they already believe it's talking about Satan, they can't see that it's clearly referring to the literal king of Babylon, who again at that time was Nebuchadnezzar. So let's read the passage, but let's start in chapter 13 at verse 19. Here it is. It says, And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency, watch this, shall be as when the Most High overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. So, what is the Most High talking about? He's talking about destroying Babylon. Verse 20, it says, It shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall the shepherds make their fold there. Verse 21, But wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of doleful creatures, and owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there. Verse 22, And the wild beasts of the islands shall cry in their desolate houses, and dragons in their pleasant palaces. And her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged. So we see that the Most High is talking about the destruction that was coming to Babylon. Now, let's go to the next verse, Isaiah 14 and 1. It says, For Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land. Now, at this time, the children of Israel was in the Babylonian captivity. So the Most High promised to have mercy on Israel and not destroy it in the destruction. It says, And the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. Verse 2, And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of Yahweh for servants and handmaids, and they shall take them captives whose captives they wore. So it says that Israel shall rule over their oppressors. Now, what people was oppressing specifically at this time? It was the Babylonians. Keep that in mind. Verse 3, it says, "And it shall come to pass in the day that Yahweh shall give thee rest from thy sorrow and from thy fear and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve." So, when the Most High delivered from the hard bondage we're in, what we're going to do? Verse 4, it says, "That thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon." Stop. Against who? It says the king of Babylon. Does it say against Satan? No. This proverb is against the king of Babylon, the one who was oppressing. Now, who was the king of Babylon at this time? It was Nebuchadnezzar. Let's read it from the top of verse 4 again. It says, "That thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon." That's Nebuchadnezzar. It says, "And say," watch this, "How hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased." Now, here we see that the king of Babylon is being called the oppressor. Why? Because at the end of verse 2, it says the Babylonians as a people was called the oppressors. Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon, so he was called the oppressor because he was the ruler of his people. Verse 5, "Yahweh hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers." So the Most High took the Babylonian empire down out of power. Why? Verse 6, it says, "He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke." See, Nebuchadnezzar was a tyrant, and he ruled over the people in anger. But when the Most High brought the Babylonian empire down, there was nobody to hinder what the Most High was doing. Verse 7, it says, "The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing." Verse 8, "Yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, Since thou art laid down, no feller is come up against us." A feller is a person that cuts down trees. The fall of the Babylonian Empire was so great that the trees even metaphorically rejoiced. Nebuchadnezzar was cutting all the trees down for his own personal use, but even the trees got a break when the Most High took them down. Verse 9, it says, "Hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stirred up the dead for thee." This is metaphorical. In other words, everyone who died before you, Nebuchadnezzar, is excited that you're about to join them. It says, "Even all the chief ones of the earth, it hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations." Again, all the kings and rulers before you are waiting for you to join them in death. Verse 10, "All they shall speak and say unto thee, Art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us?" So all the kings that died before Nebuchadnezzar were going to point out that he lost his power just like they did. Verse 11, "Thy pomp," or thy pride, "is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vows," meaning all the festivals and the celebrations that you had, all that has ceased. It says, "The worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee." So Nebuchadnezzar went from having all that power to the Most High bringing him down to nothing. Now here's what we have to look at. Who have we been talking about this whole time? Nebuchadnezzar. We're reading about how powerful he was and how the Most High took him out of power and he fell down to nothing. Now watch this. Verse 12, it says, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning?" You see that? This is where the assumption of this being Satan kicks in without people examining the entire text. We just read the whole thing in context and we saw that the whole chapter was talking about the fall of the Babylonian Empire and Nebuchadnezzar, its king. So when we get to verse 12 and we see the words, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer?" The only reason to think that this is talking about Satan is because you have a pre-existing doctrine already in your mind. The person who was fallen for the first 11 verses was Nebuchadnezzar. So why would it change over to Satan in verse 12? Verse 12 is a continuation of the first 11 verses. However, because it says fallen from heaven, people just assume it's talking about Satan, but it's not. So, why does it say he fell from heaven? Watch this. This is Lamentations chapter 2 and verse 1. It says, "How have the Lord covered the daughter of Zion with a cloud in his anger?" So, this is talking about the Most High being angry with the children of Israel. Now let's see what he did to us. It says, "And cast down from heaven unto the earth the beauty of Israel, and remembered not his footstool in the day of his anger." You see that? It says that the Most High cast down from heaven unto the earth the beauty of Israel. Now, does that mean that the Most High took the nation of Israel up into heaven where he was, and then he threw down to the ground? Of course not. He cast down from heaven in the sense that he took from a high position and then he brought down to a very low position. That's the same thing that happened to Nebuchadnezzar. So when we see the words fallen from heaven, it's not literal. The Most High took Nebuchadnezzar out of a lofty heavenly position and brought him down to nothing. Let's go back to Isaiah 14 and 12. It says, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning?" Now remember, Lucifer is not the name of a person. It's just a Latin word that means morning star. Nebuchadnezzar in his power was lifted up above everyone else like a star in the sky, but the Most High brought him down. It says, "How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?" Again, we know that this is not talking about Satan because the precept for this verse is in verse 6. Verse 12 says that he weakened the nations. Now, when we look at verse 6, it says, "He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke," watch this, "he that ruled the nations in anger." That's how Nebuchadnezzar weakened the nations. He oppressed everybody. So let's go back to verse 13. It says, "For thou, Nebuchadnezzar, hast said in thine heart," so we're dealing with pride now. It says, "I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of the Most High. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north." So we see Nebuchadnezzar's pride on display. I. Now this verse is not literal. This is not talking about somebody literally going into heaven and literally setting a throne above all the literal stars. It's not talking about that. This is metaphorical language that paints a picture of a prideful person who wants to be above everybody else, including the Most High. That's the mindset that Nebuchadnezzar had. Verse 14, it says, "I will ascend above the heights of the clouds." Here it is. "I will be like the Most High." So Nebuchadnezzar said he would be like the Most High. How? By attempting to rule over the whole world. And this is what Nebuchadnezzar thought he was going to do. His army had conquered so many people, he thought he was unstoppable. Verse 15, it says, Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit, meaning the grave. Verse 16, they that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, watch this, is this the man? Stop. Is this the what? Is this the man? It says, is this the man? Does it say, is this the spirit? No. Does it say, is this the angel? No. It says, is this the man? This is not talking about Satan. This is talking about a man. What man? Nebuchadnezzar. It says, is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms? We already read twice that Nebuchadnezzar smote the people with a continual stroke, and that he ruled the nations in anger. He is the man that did shake the kingdoms. Now, I could read the rest, but it should be clear that this passage is not talking about Satan. It's talking about a man who was consumed in pride to the point that he began to think that he was the light of the world, or the morning star. So the Most High took him down. So Lucifer is not Satan. Again, Lucifer is not a name. It's a word that simply means morning star.